Hello BookTube, welcome back to Middle Grade Monday. This was created by Storm at Storm Reads. Go check out her channel, it's iconic. And we're in a bit of a free fall when it comes to Middle Grade Monday. I thought we'd step away from Australia for at least a couple books. Last week we talked about Old Yeller, and now that you've recovered from that, I want to talk about something a bit even older than what we talked about before, and that is the one, the only, the Nonsense Books by Edward Lear himself. Here it is, the Penguin Black of it. This was the first volume was published in 1846, so it's very old. But let's talk a bit about Edward Lear because it's just very interesting in my opinion. So Edward was primarily a painter. I don't think he really had ambitions for literally ever being a writer, but he would eventually work at Knowsley Hall. I think that's how you say it. He stayed there as a patron of the Earl of Derby, and he would spend his time in the private zoo painting all of the animals and just being artsy like that. And he would also create these little limericks that he would recite to the children at the estate, and they loved it so much. And Edward had this grand idea to why not combine them both and publish them as the Nonsense Books. And little did he know what he was going to get into, because this took off completely. It literally reshaped, I think, children's books completely. I don't even know where to start with it, to be honest. So the first volume was published again in 1846, but there's three more volumes. Edward would go back to this later on in life in the 1870s, and he would publish three more volumes. But this is just essential reading, in my opinion. Put this up there with your Dickens and your Eliots, in terms of like mandatory reads from the Victorian age. Even though I think this is Victorian, yeah, from the Victorian age, in my opinion. This is, I would argue, I would take this over Alice in Wonderland, in my opinion. I just love Edward Lear, to be honest. I went back to this. I didn't reread all of it. I didn't read this growing up, of course, but I came to it when I was like 19 or so and absolutely fell in love with it and have never looked back. I go back to it every now and then. It's actually one of those books I just like have on my bedside randomly, like that and Margaret Thatcher. But yeah, so but what is in here? So what makes the Nonsense Books so interesting is that they are just so absurd. And when you look at literature as a whole in the 1800s, it was a very moral driven. It was very much let's sit down and focus on morals, especially children's books. When you go and think of, I know this is an older comparison, but like The Pilgrim's Progress and a couple other stuff that came out at the time. Edward Lear is just a complete shot of adrenaline. They're very absurd in their humor. Like, literally, just look at this cover, and this should tell you everything about it. It's a randomly satirizing at some points because some of the opening and closing lines will make fun of Edward Lear himself of being a bit of a weirdo. It's just a very weird, and I love them so much. The most famous limerick you'd probably know from the Nonsense Books is The Owl and the Pussycat. That's famous in and of its own right, but I'll show you some of this because I have the Penguin edition, of course. This has notes in it. You don't need notes to go into Lear. I think they do a really good job with the notes to each book, and they give like good biography of Lear, and also they include all of his original illustrations, of course. Very short. You can get through these easily. Some of these ones too, and I'll show you some of the bigger ones they go to. Like, very much fun stuff like this. I'm so glad Penguin publishes this. Like, literally, I would actually like to have a hardcover edition of just the complete Nonsense Books. Again, they're mostly published now just as complete books rather than be individual volumes. I think that's the best way to go, but I'm always on the hunt for a pretty illustrated edition of the Nonsense Books. But I'm happy to have the Penguin, and yeah, that's your Oz book. Oh my god, that's your middle grade book. I don't know, I'm getting so confused. This is your middle grade Monday book, the Nonsense Books by Edward Lear. Have you read these? Go check them out. These are in Gutenberg, public domain. These are prehistorically old, and you can find them anywhere. But yeah, let me know what you think, and thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.